we're just going to get the guests back up. I'm going to kick us off with a question, and then just pop your hand up while they're answering if you've got a question, and I'll come on out with a microphone and get you to ask your questions. Jamie, I'm going to focus my first question on you, if you don't mind. You talked about the millennials coming through and becoming leaders in their mid-30s. One of the challenges that I'm seeing is that we've seen such a massive hiring in the last 5 years across tech that you're seeing people go from individual contributor to leader in their mid-20s now on some occasions, which has to be a really big challenge for people. Just interested to get your commentary around that.
Yeah, it is, and I'm actually glad you asked that. I wasn't expecting it, but it actually takes me to, I was actually originally, after being a decent individual contributor, I was made a sales manager at 30 years old, and I was absolutely effing horrible in the job. I had no humility, right? I had no empathy. I expected everybody to do the things the way that I did them, and when they didn't, I get very frustrated. And it didn't last. And I remember, all I remember at the time was saying, I'm never going to let that happen to anyone. And I spent the next 10 years as an individual contributor before becoming a leader again. I'm 52 now, right? And believe me, I feel it. But I'm 52 now, and those last 12 years, as a leader, bringing on and supporting new leaders with proper mentorship, making sure that we find, a young leader, a mentor. Sometimes I'm a mentor myself, obviously. Bringing in professional coaching, particularly for sales leaders. Things that are really important: focus, discipline, cadence, communication, and setting them up with. I use a firm in particular that I've used now 3 times to grow next generation leaders, and it works really well. And it's just about giving them a framework to succeed, because then they create the next generation again. They're used to that focus, and it is discipline's the key word.
It's interesting because we talk about, Carl, you talked about that sort of hyper-transparency and being super honest with people, and we look at people across their career that want to be promoted at 25, 26, 27 into leadership roles, and I guess we almost have a responsibility to protect them from running into something that they could fail and not yet be ready for in terms of emotionally and just years of experience to some degree.
No, but I think it's about, again, I talked about the demigods of tech. There's a fair few of them, but those stories, other people's stories about how they failed in their career, and that actually helped them to realize things that put them a lot ahead of other people. I talked about when the winds are blowing straight in your face and not from your back, and you have tailwind. I think that's the opportunity to learn the most. But it's also about, and I do a fair bit of mentorship as well, and I think mentorship is a key part. We talked about that, but if you have talented people, make sure they get sound advice as well. And to me, early on in the career, and I was a hyper ambitious person, I couldn't rest, I couldn't sit still. I'm always been that kind, if I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD yet, maybe it happens in the future, but it's about calming people down and optimize for learning rather than career. Because to me, it's the same. When you you talked about coming out from college, you're competing with 10,000 other people, 100,000 other people with the same degrees. How do you optimize so you learn as much as possible in the shortest amount of time? So next round, you're competing with 5,000 people because you're just smarter, more intelligent, have more experience. And to me, it's more about choosing your leaders and your mentors to make sure you optimize for learning as much as possible, rather than choosing what looks best on paper or gives you, nice little title on LinkedIn or whatever. Choose optimize for learning, and that's the most important advice that I got, rather than trying to just push for title, salary, or whatever it is.
Indeed, very sound advice. I'm going to throw this out to the audience. If you have a question for any of our speakers, please put your hand up and I'll come on out to you over here. Just let us know your name and where you're from as well.
Sorry? Just let us know your name and where you're from. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Bas. I'm from Bluebird. We do recruitment for software companies. I was Gerard, right? Yeah. I'm really curious to hear, because you told us about SDR, like important stuff to focus on. I really like the whole talk. And then you also said something around that they should focus less on themselves and more on the customer. Right? Yeah. I think what also is super interesting to understand from your side is how would you compensate SDRs? Because that's also hugely impacting the way they act in the business, right? So what do you say would be a good compensation plan for SDRs?
No, thanks for that question. It's a great one, and I do have an answer for it. I just want to clarify on the. Did you talk about upsell in the question? For me the main message was SDRs book the meeting. You know, they get a lead sourcing ICP assistant, so they're not in the data all day long. They're on the phone. They book the meeting. The meeting gets sold by a very busy, effective AE. Then that gets passed to the account manager, who should become the closest person to the customer, who can then do renewal, upsell, and cross-sell, because it's that single point of contact. So that's a clarification on that. When it comes to the actual compensation for SDRs, I've seen various models, and none of them are optimal, because they either focus on the inputs, which can be, right, you know, a meeting that's occurred, often, you know, is it a demo completed, various numbers ranging from 10 to 18 in a month, with an element of ACV closed, which they have no direct control over, but that really ultimately is the badge of honor metric, right? You know, how much revenue am I generating over a longer time period? And I've had debates with managers to say, right, well, how should I be paid then? Should I be paid on the demo booked, on the demo completed, on it converting to an opportunity, on the amount of pipeline generated, or the ACV closed? And I said, it's no individual metric, because it can be gamed, right? Sadly, that's what we encourage people to do. It's human nature to go and find and optimize your earnings. If you're going to get paid on meetings, you're going to find ways of booking meetings. If you're going to get paid on pipeline, you're probably going to develop a relationship with your rep that influences that pipeline, you know, and so on. And so the ultimate measure of a successful SDR is the conversion tightness of the whole process. So meetings booked, yes. Meetings held, meetings turned into realistic pipeline, then the conversion of that pipeline as a ratio to closed, you know, closed one ultimately, but also looking at the loss rate as well, and having, you know, whatever appropriate metrics for your company that show that there's authenticity in the quality of the work rather than gaming it. So it can be quite complex. Yeah, yeah, yeah. A combination of the conversions, so that ACV is still part of it, but you know, you're actually looking at the quality at the top.
Any other questions from the room? Right, we've got one right at the back, and I'll run just to make use some time.
Thank you. You talked earlier about ICP being a bit of a moving target these days. For us, it took us sort of the best part of a year to properly define it, and then coach it, and then get people at every level selling against this sort of ICP. So I'd be really interested to know not only how you sort of switched your ICP, but then also how you then implemented that right the way through the business and were able to turn that so quickly.
I think everybody probably have. I think that's a great, and again, I think, as I mentioned before, it's depending on how your business is built, how large teams you have. Everybody probably in here is not Salesforce, so you can set 100 people in that direction for that vertical, and et cetera, et cetera. I think, again, the investment in sales enablement is so important, ensuring that you as a sales leader work with training and making sure that people have the right training to actually succeed. You can just send people in blind and hope they're going to succeed, right? So you have to be really quick on iterate on training, so you don't have some type of LMS system with updated training from 2019 on how you close a deal in a new ICP, which to be honest, when you ask people, that tends to be I see people laughing, but I mean, look at these things, think about these things. Then I think, again, from that perspective, I feel as a CRO, we have a team of 60 odd people in our sales team. I need to speak to those customers to actually hear them. You can do that in different ways, attend selected meetings, use Gong or Chorus or whatever it is, but I think that's extremely important to stay on top of things. And then you can also, depending on the size of your team, you can of course organize that. You probably have a team that's better to adapt quickly. So having a specific team that maybe goes in and tests those new ICPs and figure out the process. So you have more of an internal POC because before you push it out to the wider team, so you can tweak the different things and change the different things that's necessary. So it's easier to get out to the masses of your sales team. But again, have trusted people that you can work with. You know what you get out of them if they succeed. You can then compare the results based on different trials and errors and different types of ICPs. But I don't think you can just change your ICP and say, this is it, we're going after it. You really need to test. You probably need to test 2, 3 at once, compare to them, because some people, you have an easier way of booking opportunities, but then conversion down the line is worse, right? At the end of the day, I always think compensate on revenue on talking about SDRs, but I love compensating as much as possible on revenue on all departments, right? Even if you're an engineer or marketing or partnership, revenue is important to compensate because ultimately that's what we care about.
Lara, just going to move the question on, if that's all right, just quickly. I'm just really keen to hear from you on what was the moment in your row where you were closest to giving up? Because I'm guessing you obviously didn't give up, which is incredible, but I'm guessing there were moments where you felt you should, and I'm just linking back that back into Carl's point around, hard work is a non-negotiable, and I guess at that point, that probably, maybe in hindsight now, but would have rung true. So I'm just keen to hear a quick tale of that toughest moment.
Oh, that's a hard one. I would say because of what it was, I had a lot of motivation to not give up. I was raising money for charity, the main one being prostate cancer. My father passed away 6 weeks before I left. So the motivation there was fairly high. I think closest to giving up, I'm going to say, to be absolutely honest, there was never a moment I was going to give up. When I had my capsize, and I remember it was like January the 14th, and I was hit by a rogue wave side on, and it capsized the boat, and I was upside down. And I thought it was a really silly way to die. That was my initial thought.
Probably pretty warm as well.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
So I think that was the main, that was probably the moment. And I think actually it really helped me because I was like, I've just managed to get through that. I've managed to get the boat back the right way up. I didn't lose too much stuff. And I carried on. So if you can get through that.
As long as you didn't lose your hula hoops, that's all we care about. Right,
exactly.
Moving on. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? No, we've got one over here. I'm going to run this way because it's easier. Hang on.
Hi, Jack, SDR at Cognism. This is a question for Gerard. You mentioned about making sure that the activity you do is maximised and that it's relevant to your ICP. What do you think the best way is to learn the problems that are actually relevant to your ICP? For context, at Cognism, we also sell to sales leaders.
Yeah, no, thanks. Good. Appreciate the question. I think that nothing really can replace a massive amount of direct, narrow focus enablement. And so when we talk about ICPs, it really is narrowing it down to ideally the same why you, why now outreach. This is why I'm calling you. This is what I'm going to fix. And actually trying to segment that amongst your SDR team so that, 1 or 2 people have the same one and they can get trained to be really credible. Because that credibility, when it's dropped on someone and they know you're not wasting their time, that starts the sales cycle with a lot of trust. And then the relationship can come as a result off the back of that. But, as it relates to your question, for me, it's, I was inspired by Mark Roberge, who wrote the book Sales Acceleration Formula. And in that book, he actually created, an actual working environment for the sales reps to be doing the same work that the customers were doing, so setting up websites and driving traffic to it. And then similarly, trying to get as best as possible your salespeople to experience the pain that the product solves. So at Pat Snap, it's a big part of it is simplifying the whole complexity around patent searching and making sure you're not infringing on somebody else's intellectual property. We're working on a program to actually get people to go and find those manually using free tools, getting really frustrated with it and going, now log into the platform and see how much quicker it is using the tech, so that they own the solution, not just as a theoretical construct, but as something that they've actually felt as a problem solved. So anything that can be done to make that as real as possible will drive the authenticity when it comes to all aspects of the sales cycle. I mean, it's ultimately an approach to the decision maker and the pain that they feel themselves, which would normally be amplified by the pain felt downstream. It's trying to work out. I think somebody said it today. No, it was yourself, Jamie. No one wakes up thinking I'm going to buy software, but there's a latent anxieties that sit in everybody that, if they're targeted in a simple way, will be responded to. So an example would be, I even used this as a coaching point earlier today. I said to one of the managers, I said, do you know what you pay for your gas bill? He told me. I said, are you sure that you're not being overcharged? He said, I'm not sure. So if you got a cold call from someone saying, you might be paying too much for your gas bill, have you got a minute just to check? You might be willing to give them a minute. I said, that's all it takes to open a sales cycle. Just go for this latent insecurity that you're not really bothered about fixing, but that's there, and just press on it and create the start of something bigger that could end up with you installing a heat pump in your house. Who knows? But if you call someone and say, would you like a heat pump in your house? You're probably going to hang up because it's too complicated. You need to get there from massive simplicity progressively to complexity. So the problem faced by the end user isn't going to be the one faced by the person picking up the phone, and that's where the research and really understanding that is critical. Without that, you're just basically hoping for a meeting.
I'm afraid we have now run out of time for questions. Carl, Lara, Jamie and Gerard, thank you so much. All of your talks were fantastic tonight. It's been one of the most successful evenings in terms of quality of talk, and all pretty much sticking to the 7 minutes-ish as well, which is outstanding. So could I just please ask you all to give all of our speakers tonight a round of applause?